He was a Navy SEAL left bleeding in the snow, a pilot with a shattered leg fighting for breath, and a war-trained dog who refused to let either of them die. On a mountain where every step meant life or death, they faced bullets, betrayal, and a blizzard sent to finish them. But when the bridge collapsed and hope seemed lost, a miracle broke through the storm, proof that loyalty, courage, and faith can outshine even the darkest night. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories of bravery and hope. Snow drifted across the jagged ridgeline like white smoke carried by a merciless wind. In the brutal cold of the Central Asian frontier, Ethan Hale lay motionless against a ledge of dark granite, his body pressed so tightly to the rock that he looked like part of the mountain itself. At 33 years old, Ethan's physique was the definition of a soldier honed by war. Tall, broad-shouldered, every muscle built through deployments where survival depended on conditioning as much as skill. His face was a map of hard angles, a strong jaw shadowed by stubble, high cheekbones touched by windburn, and eyes the color of cold steel. Those eyes rarely blinked, as if he feared missing a single detail of the world around him. His skin bore the rugged tan of a man who'd spent more of his life outdoors under foreign suns than at home. And beneath the surface, deeper than sinew or bone, lived a man shaped by loss. Friends buried in deserts, missions gone wrong, and a lingering guilt from an operation in Mosul years ago where he had been forced to choose between two teammates. And only one came home. That guilt lived in him like a second heartbeat, and though he hid it beneath discipline, it was always there on the edges of his thoughts. Beside him, pressed low to the stone, Ranger surveyed the valley below, with the intense concentration of a predator built for war. Ranger was a 6-year-old Belgian Malinois, large for his breed, yet lean with the hard, dry musculature earned from endless training. His coat was a deep, rich tan, layered with black along the snout and spine, and his sharp amber eyes reflected a level of intelligence that made him seem almost human. He was a Tier 1 K9, trained for tracking, attack, detection, and silent communication with his handler. Every twitch of his ears, every breath through his powerful chest, spoke of awareness. Ranger was disciplined, loyal, and fiercely protective of Ethan. Because in Ranger's world, Ethan was not just a handler. He was the center of all things, a pack leader worth dying for. Their assignment was simple on paper. Observe the illegal radar station nestled in the valley and record evidence of activity. No engagement, no interference, no heroics. 29 hours of silence already blurred into each other, and the biting wind had a way of crawling beneath even the best clothing. Ethan wore his standard multicam uniform topped with a plate carrier, no cap, nothing to break discipline or profile. The cold gnawed at the edges of his exposed skin, where frost clung to his eyebrows and lashes. But he didn't complain. He never did. Complaints didn't keep you alive. Ranger's ears flicked back subtly, and Ethan's gloved hand rested on the dog's flank. "You good, buddy?" he whispered, barely letting the words escape his lips. Ranger gave a quiet, controlled exhale, a signal Ethan understood as clearly as speech. "I'm ready. I'm with you." His scope was trained on the valley, the illegal radar station partially concealed beneath camouflage tarps, its antennae rotating like predatory eyes sweeping the sky. Trucks moved in and out of reinforced tunnels, guards patrolled lazily with rifles slung carelessly on their shoulders. The entire site was an international violation waiting to explode into conflict. If anyone else knew it existed, Ethan's job was to be eyes, nothing more. "Alpha 2, status," came a faint whisper through his secure comms. Ethan pressed the push-to-talk briefly. "Alpha 2, visual steady, no changes, continuing overwatch." He kept his voice controlled, steady. His discipline didn't allow fatigue to color his words. Ranger shifted again, and Ethan caught the tension immediately. The dog wasn't cold. Ranger never trembled from cold. This was something else, something in the air, vibration, sound, scent, had changed. Ethan lifted his gaze from the scope. "What do you hear, boy?" he murmured. Then he heard it, a low mechanical hum in the distance, rising fast. Ranger's muscles coiled. Ethan angled his rifle toward the sky. The hum grew into a roar, and then he saw it, an Allied reconnaissance aircraft, a 2-seat reconnaissance jet, slicing through the high-altitude sky. It glinted silver, a dart cutting through the cold blue expanse. Ethan frowned. What the hell are you doing here? The aircraft shouldn't have been anywhere near this airspace. Before he could question further, a streak of white shot upward from the valley, fast, unnatural, deadly. A missile. No! Ethan breathed, the word vanishing instantly into the wind. The missile carved a tight arc, homing with cold precision. The jet attempted to climb, but the missile closed the distance faster than physics seemed to allow. He's a flash, violent, metallic, and the jet lurched midair. One wing detached, spinning away like a leaf in a storm. Smoke bled across the sky. Within seconds, the aircraft began its catastrophic descent. Ethan's stomach clenched, tension rippling through every muscle. Ranger whimpered quietly, a sound Ethan almost never heard from him. "Easy, Ranger," he whispered. "Easy?" But there was no easing the truth as the aircraft plummeted into the tree line beyond the ridge. A deep, concussive thud shook the valley moments later. Ethan's mind snapped into a sharper focus. "Alpha 2 reporting..." He stopped mid-sentence. A small white bloom appeared above the crash site. A parachute. Someone survived. Ethan adjusted his scope to maximum magnification. Through the swirling snow, he saw her, the pilot. Lieutenant Claire Rowan. Her name flashed in his memory. She had been assigned to a recon squadron temporarily working with naval intelligence. He'd never met her, but he knew the type. Sharp mind, quick reflexes, and the fearless confidence unique to aviators. As she drifted downward, battered by crosswinds, Ethan saw she was alive but struggling. Her landing site was a dense forest several clicks from the crash, and dangerously close to enemy ground patrol routes. His comms crackled again. "Alpha 2, maintain visual. Do not engage. Your mission remains Overwatch." Ethan didn't respond. He watched Claire disappear into the trees, the parachute collapsing in a swirl of fabric. Ranger growled softly. Not a warning, an urge, a plea. Ethan felt a knot tighten in his chest, one made of duty, instinct, and memory. He remembered Mosul, the choice he'd made, the teammate he couldn't save. He remembered the mother who'd handed him a folded flag after the funeral, her hands shaking. "You did everything you could," she'd whispered. Ethan never believed her. Now, watching the pilot alone in the snow, he felt that same weight pressing against his ribs. His orders were clear. Maintain observation. Do not compromise the mission. Do nothing. But doing nothing had its own price. And he had paid it before. Ranger nudged his elbow again, pressing cold fur against Ethan's sleeve. Ethan spoke without looking at the dog. "I know," he whispered, voice barely audible. "I know, buddy." Below, enemy trucks were mobilizing. He could hear engines growling faintly through the valley. They were moving fast. They had seen the parachute, too. Claire wouldn't last 10 minutes if they reached her first. Ethan reached for the comms, thumb hovering over the transmit button. He should report. Should wait for orders. Should stay hidden. Should let someone else handle this. But no one else was close enough. No one else could get to her in time. No one else had Ranger. His heartbeat thudded like a drum. Ranger stared at him, ears pointed, eyes sharp. The dog already knew the choice, and Ethan did too. "Damn it," he breathed. "Damn it." He pressed the comms. "Mayday, Mayday, Alpha 2, Allied aircraft down, one shoot spotted, pilot location approximate at grid." He recited coordinates. "Hostile forces moving to intercept. I am initiating unauthorized SR." He shut the comms off before anyone could countermand. Silence swallowed the ridge. Ranger stood, ready. Ethan slung his pack, secured his rifle, and gave the only command that mattered now. "Ranger, track." The dog surged forward, nose to the wind. Ethan followed, boots carving into the snow as they descended into the forest below, leaving behind the mission, the ridge, and the rules that once defined him. He wasn't a ghost anymore. He was a man running toward danger to save a stranger. And for the first time in years, the burden in his chest felt a little lighter. The forest swallowed them in a suffocating silence, broken only by the crunch of boots on crusted snow and the rhythmic huffing of Ranger as he forged ahead. Ethan Hale moved behind him with controlled speed, every step deliberate to avoid snapping twigs or dislodging loose ice. Though his lungs burned from the thin mountain air, he pushed harder, driven by something deeper than duty, a vow etched into his bones. He had lost people before, watched them slip through his grasp because he obeyed the rules. Not again, not today. Ranger lowered his head, nostrils flaring as he inhaled the scent trails only a K9 of his caliber could separate from the freezing wind. Snowflakes clung to the dense black saddle marking on his back, and his amber eyes glowed with the single-minded intensity that made him the most reliable asset Ethan ever had. The dog slowed, sniffed, then broke sharply to the right, paws digging into the drifts. "Tracker, Ranger," Ethan murmured, though the command wasn't needed. The dog already knew. The forest thickened, pine trees looming like ancient guardians draped in white. Ethan's rifle was raised, finger hovering expertly near the trigger guard, safety off. Years of combat had sharpened his instincts into something precognitive. The faint prickle along his spine told him the enemy was coming. They would not let a downed pilot slip through their territory. She represented leverage, information, and a political bomb waiting to explode. Ranger halted, tail stiff, his body aligned forward like an arrow. Ethan followed his gaze through the swirling snow. A flutter of white fabric snagged on a fallen log. Parachute lines. Ranger advanced with caution, ears rotating independently, scanning every layer of sound. Ethan's breath fogged in the icy air as he approached the impact area. They found Claire Rowan half buried in snow, tangled in parachute cords, one leg twisted at an unnatural angle. She was conscious, but barely. Her face, streaked with dirt and blood, held the pallor of shock. Her dark brown hair, usually tight under her flight helmet, was matted against her face. She was slender, but built with the wiry strength of a pilot used to G-forces. Maybe 5'7", olive skin now faded beneath the cold. Her lips trembled, and her gloved hand clutched instinctively at her thigh. Ethan crouched beside her, assessing with a practiced medic's eye. "Lieutenant Rowan," he whispered, voice steady. "You're safe. I'm Navy, Ethan Hale. I've got you." Her eyes fluttered open, revealing irises a striking mix of green and hazel. Even clouded with pain, they carried a fierce intelligence. "You came," she rasped. "Couldn't let you freeze out here," he replied, "or fall into the wrong hands." Her gaze landed on Ranger, who stood guard at her feet, chest rising and falling in slow, disciplined rhythm. Yours? "Partner," Ethan said. "The best one I've got." He cut the parachute lines with a swift stroke of his blade and examined her leg. A compound fracture. Not ideal, not here. Blood had seeped through the flight suit, staining the snow in deep shades of crimson. Claire winced as Ethan palpated the area with gentle precision. Her injury complicated everything. She wasn't walking, not on her own. And the enemy was closing in. "I'm going to stabilize your leg," Ethan told her. "It's going to hurt." She let out a breathy laugh. "Everything already hurts." Ranger stiffened suddenly, ears pricking, body leaning toward the wind. Ethan froze. In the distance, muffled by the thick blanket of snow, came the unmistakable sound of men. Boots crunching, low voices barking orders, metal clinking. "Patrol," Ethan whispered. "They're close." Claire's eyes widened, panic threading through her foggy consciousness. Ethan placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Stay still. Stay quiet." He grabbed a collapsible brace from his pack and secured her leg, working swiftly but with care. She bit down on her glove to swallow a scream as he adjusted the bones into better alignment. Ranger emitted a low growl, not loud, but deep, vibrating through the ground beneath them. Ethan's mind raced. He needed to move her, now. "Ranger, guard." The dog immediately shifted into position behind Claire, blocking her from the line of sight toward the approaching voices. Ethan scanned the area, and his eyes landed on a natural depression between two fallen pines. A makeshift hide, barely adequate, but better than nothing. "Hold on," he whispered to Claire. He lifted her carefully, and she stifled a cry as her injured leg shifted. She was lighter than he expected, but the dead weight of injury made every movement difficult. Snowflakes swirled around them in a blinding veil as he laid her gently in the sheltered nook. Boots crunched closer. Men speaking in harsh syllables emerged from the white curtain of snowfall. At least 6 of them, wearing mismatched winter gear and carrying compact rifles. Ethan watched from behind a pine trunk. Ranger pressed low at his side, muscles taut like drawn wire. The patrol fanned out, scanning the area aggressively. One soldier spotted the parachute tangled on the log. He shouted, waving his rifle wildly. Too close, too dangerous. Ethan made his decision. He signaled Ranger with a silent hand command. Flank. The dog slipped away like smoke, melting into the snow-draped underbrush. Ethan counted the patrol's positions, analyzing angles, timing their movements. His pulse slowed, every breath measured. Ranger reappeared behind the farthest soldier, perfectly positioned. Ethan moved. His suppressed rifle coughed 3 soft shots, each one precise. 2 soldiers dropped before their brains registered the attack. The remaining men panicked, spinning toward the sound. Ranger launched himself like a missile, jaws clamping around the arm of a soldier reaching for a grenade. The man screamed, falling backward as Ranger ripped him down with practiced brutality. Ethan fired again, 2 rapid bursts, eliminating the remaining threats with surgical accuracy. The entire engagement took less than 10 seconds. Silence reclaimed the forest, broken only by Ranger's heavy breathing and the soft patter of snow settling. Ethan scanned for movement, then whistled sharply. Ranger trotted back, muzzle flecked with blood, tail still and disciplined. Ethan knelt, checking him for injuries. You good? Ranger nudged his shoulder. That meant, I'm fine. Check the human. Ethan returned to Claire. She looked shaken but conscious, pupils slightly dilated. Her skin had lost more color, and sweat prickled her temples despite the cold. You saved me, she whispered, disbelief and pain mingling in her voice. Not done yet. Ethan pressed the back of his glove to her forehead. Heat radiated beneath the cold. Fever was setting in. Not good. She shivered violently, clutching at the snow-covered ground. We need shelter, Ethan said. A place out of the wind. Your body won't fight infection like this. Ranger barked once, sharp, urgent. What is it? Ethan asked, and the dog darted ahead, then turned back, signaling. He's found something, Ethan murmured. Could be shelter, could be danger. Either way, we follow. He hoisted Claire onto his back, securing her arms around his neck as gently as he could. Her breath hitched from the pain. Ranger guided them through the tightening storm, snow whipping sideways in sheets. The forest seemed to shift, twisting into a maze of white shadows. Minutes stretched into agonizing hours before Ranger finally stopped at a fissure between 2 massive boulders. On closer inspection, Ethan saw a narrow passage barely wide enough for him to squeeze through. Ranger slipped in first, tail disappearing into darkness. Ethan ducked inside, carrying Claire as carefully as the cramped space allowed. The interior opened into a shallow cavern, not much larger than a single-room shack but shielded from the wind. The air was marginally warmer, and the snow outside muted into a distant moan. Ethan laid Claire onto a patch of dry earth. Her breathing was shallow, her skin flushed unnaturally. Fever, bleeding, shock, it was all hitting at once. Stay with me, Claire, Ethan whispered as he ripped open a medical pouch. You're not dying out here, not today. She managed a weak smile. You're annoyingly confident. It's kept me alive, he replied, injecting a measured dose of pain medication and antibiotics. Ranger curled up beside her body, offering warmth. Claire rested her trembling fingers against his fur. He's warm. He's built for this, Ethan said. We're all built for something. He checked the entrance. Footprints and blood trails left by the patrol could lead reinforcements straight to them, and the storm was getting worse. Claire's eyelids fluttered as she slipped in and out of consciousness. Ethan. Yeah? You shouldn't have come for me. Ethan's jaw tightened, the memory of Mosul flashing like lightning behind his eyes. I don't leave people behind. You don't even know me. I know enough. Her breathing steadied slightly as the medication took effect. Her fever, however, continued its relentless climb. Outside, the storm roared like a living beast, drowning the world in white. Inside, Ethan Hale braced himself. This was only the beginning. He had found Claire. He had saved her from the first wave. But the mountain, the enemy, and the storm were far from finished with them. The storm clawed across the mountains with a ferocity that stripped the world of all color, turning everything into a blinding wash of white. Ethan Hale pushed forward with Claire Rowan secured tightly against his back, her shallow breaths brushing weakly across the nape of his neck. Ranger broke trail ahead, ears pinned back, his sleek Belgian Malinois body cutting through knee-deep snow with instinctive precision. The dog's tan and black coat was dusted white, his muscles rippling beneath the fur as he followed a scent or memory only he understood. The deeper they moved, the heavier the snow fell, and the more the world shrank into something claustrophobic and cold. Ethan felt the weight of Claire, not physically, though she was light, dangerously light, but emotionally. She was slipping deeper into fever, and every few minutes she murmured incoherent fragments of words, sometimes his name, sometimes pleas that made no sense. He felt her burning against his chilled skin, and fear gnawed at him in a way bullets and enemies never had. Ranger suddenly veered left, barking once, a short, commanding sound. Ethan followed, his boots sinking into soft snow until a shape emerged from the storm, a weather-beaten wooden structure hunched against the mountainside like an old animal clinging to its last moments. It was a nomadic herder's shelter, simple, small, abandoned long ago. The door, made of splintering planks tied with rope, hung crookedly. Ethan pushed it open with his shoulder, bracing as the rusted hinges protested in a long, metallic scream. The interior smelled of old smoke and forgotten lives. Animal hides lay rotting in the corners, and a circle of blackened stones marked where a fire once lived. "It'll do," he muttered. Nothing about it was comforting, but it was shelter, and right now, shelter meant survival. He knelt and lowered Claire onto a flattened hide near the far wall. Her face was flushed crimson with fever, lips dry, lashes clumped with melting snow. Up close, she looked even younger, though the lines of resilience around her eyes revealed someone who had spent years navigating the skies under pressure few civilians would ever understand. Her hair, dark and tangled, clung to her forehead. Ethan brushed it aside gently. "Hang on, Lieutenant," he murmured. She didn't answer. She barely breathed. Ranger nudged Ethan's arm, his warm breath puffing against Ethan's sleeve. The dog's amber eyes were sharp with urgency, pleading in the way only a K9 could. Do something. Fix her. Save her. Ethan set to work. He stacked dry pieces of the abandoned furniture, splintered stools, bits of shelving, into a crude pile, and shaved what little kindling he had left. His hands moved with the automatic precision of training, muscle memory guiding him through the motions, even as exhaustion dragged heavily at his limbs. He struck sparks from his ferro rod into the tinder. After several tries, flames sprang up, small but determined. The fire's glow pushed back the numbing cold and cast shifting light across the cabin. Ranger lay beside Claire, curling his warm body against her, his head resting protectively on her uninjured leg. The dog's presence seemed to calm her. Her breathing eased slightly. Ethan crushed snow into a tin cup and held it near the flame until it melted, then carefully lifted Claire's head and brought the cup to her lips. Her eyelids fluttered, and she swallowed a small sip before sinking back into unconsciousness. He checked her pulse. Rapid. Too rapid. Her skin burned beneath his glove. Infection had set in. He did what he could, cleaned her wound again, rewrapped her leg, gave her another measured dose of antibiotics. But he knew the truth, the mountain, the cold, the blood loss. All of it was pushing her body beyond its limits. Hours passed. The storm raged outside like a living beast trying to claw its way in. Inside, the fire crackled weakly, its warmth the only barrier between life and the frozen darkness swallowing the world. Ethan sat near Claire, leaning against the rough wooden wall. Ranger dozed beside him, though even in sleep, the dog remained alert, ears twitching at every shift of wind, every creak of the cabin. Ethan tried to rest, but every time he closed his eyes, memories came back. Not soft ones, not good ones. Mosul, the alleyway choked with dust, the explosion, the screaming, the choice, and the face of his teammate, Martinez, who he couldn't save. He opened his eyes again, breathing hard, chest tight. He looked at Claire, at Ranger. He wouldn't lose them too. He couldn't. Not again. The cabin flickered with shadows as the fire dimmed, making the corners seem deeper and more ominous. Exhaustion tugged at Ethan, whispering that sleep was safe, that rest was harmless. He fought it, but eventually, even soldiers fall. He drifted. The warmth of the fire became the sweltering heat of desert sun. The smell of smoke became the acrid stench of explosives. The cabin walls melted into the crumbling mud brick walls of an abandoned building in Kandahar. Claire's face shifted, her dark hair replaced by a black headscarf, her feverish breathing turning into the chilling calm of a suicide bomber he once cornered. A woman who had smiled at him moments before, detonating the vest strapped beneath her clothes. No, Ethan muttered in his sleep. Ranger lifted his head, ears angled toward him. Ethan's breath quickened, his fists clenched, the hallucination deepened. Claire stirred, awakening from her fever dream, just as Ethan jolted upright, eyes unfocused, pupils wide with terror. He didn't see her, he didn't see Ranger, he saw the bomber, the trigger, the flash that swallowed two of his friends whole. Claire's weak voice cut through the haze. "Ethan?" He flinched like he'd been struck. His body moved before thought caught up. He lunged, grabbing her wrists, pinning her back against the hide-covered floor. "Don't!" he choked out, voice rough, breath shaking. Ranger exploded into motion, launching himself between them in a flash of movement. His shoulder slammed into Ethan's chest, knocking him sideways. The dog didn't bite, didn't attack. He barked, sharp, relentless, piercing through the fog clouding Ethan's mind. A bark that wasn't aggression. It was desperation. "Wake up. Come back. You're hurting her. Remember who she is." Ethan gasped, the hallucination fracturing. The shadows receded. The bomber vanished. The mud walls dissolved into wooden planks. His vision cleared, and he saw what he was doing. His hand was clamped on Claire's collarbone. She was staring at him, terrified, yet trying not to show it. Ranger stood between them, body low, eyes locked onto Ethan with equal measures of fear and loyalty. "Claire," Ethan whispered, his chest constricting painfully. God, I didn't." He pushed himself backward until he hit the wall. He buried his head in his hands, fingers digging into his scalp. "Damn it! Damn it!" Claire winced as she shifted, but she didn't cry or yell. Instead, she sat up slowly, leaning heavily against the wall opposite him. Her voice was soft, somehow steady. "You're here, Ethan. You're not there. Look at me." He didn't move. A broken sound escaped him, half an exhale, half a sob. He hadn't made that sound since Martinez's funeral. Claire pushed through her pain, crawling slowly toward him. Ranger followed her movements closely, but didn't intervene. He sensed the danger had passed. When Claire reached Ethan, she placed a trembling hand on his knee. He flinched, but didn't pull away. "Hey," she whispered, "look at me." Finally he did. His eyes were red, glassy, haunted. She held his gaze. "You saved me," she murmured. "Now let me help you." His throat worked. He wanted to speak, but no words came. She continued, voice barely above a breath. "You keep everyone alive. You carry everything alone. It's okay to let someone carry a piece of it with you." He blinked, silent tears slipping down his face. Ranger pressed his head against Ethan's thigh, grounding him. Claire rested her forehead against Ethan's shoulder. "You saved me?" she whispered again. "Now it's my turn to keep you here." For the first time in years, Ethan let his guard fall, just for a moment. The storm outside screamed and clawed at the cabin, but inside, something fragile and profound settled between the three of them. Trust, born from danger and brokenness. As the fire dimmed once more, Ethan stayed awake, watching Claire breathe, watching Ranger rest with his head on her leg. He would protect them, both of them. No matter what the mountain demanded, no matter what ghost tried to drag him back. By the time the storm began to ease at dawn's first dim light, the bond between them was no longer just necessity. It was something unspoken, powerful, and unbreakable. The three of them, man, woman, dog, were now tied together by survival itself. And though the night had been filled with terror, its ending held something else. Hope. The storm faded slowly, peeling away layer by layer until only the faint sting of wind remained, brushing over the abandoned shelter like a sigh of exhaustion from the mountain itself. Dawn arrived without warmth, a muted gray glow bleeding across the snow-draped world. Ethan Hale had not slept. He remained seated against the rough wooden wall of the old herder's cabin, tightening the straps on his plate carrier, checking each magazine, rechecking his rifle as if mechanical precision could drown out the remnants of last night's nightmare. His face looked as if it had been carved from stone, hard jaw clenched, stubble thick from days without rest. Steel blue eyes ringed with fatigue, but unforgivingly sharp. The emotional aftermath clung to him like an invisible weight, but he refused to let it show. Not now. Not when both Claire and Ranger depended on him. Claire Rowan was drifting between fever dreams and short moments of clarity. The worst had passed, thanks to antibiotics, warmth, and Ranger's constant pressure against her body. But she remained frighteningly weak. Ethan knelt beside her, checking her pulse, lifting her near-weightless frame slightly to let her sip warm water. Her dark hair clung to her cheeks, her olive-toned skin pale beneath the fever. But there was determination simmering beneath her exhaustion, a pilot's pride refusing to yield. Her hazel-green eyes flickered open as he tucked the thermal blanket closer around her. "You're leaving again?" she murmured softly, her voice a frayed whisper, more emotion than sound. "No," Ethan replied, and though the word was quiet, it carried unwavering steel. "We're all leaving, together. The extraction point isn't far." Claire tried to sit upright, but winced sharply as her fractured leg shifted. "I can't walk, Ethan." "I know," he said gently. "That's why I'm carrying you." She blinked, as if absorbing his certainty made it real. "You shouldn't have to do this." "Shouldn't doesn't matter," he answered. "What matters is surviving the next few hours." Ranger padded toward them, tail low. His gait slightly uneven from the scuffle in the cave, but his eyes bright and sharp. He nudged Ethan's knee, signaling readiness. Ethan placed his palm briefly on the dog's head. "Good boy. Still with me?" Ranger exhaled, a soft huff that meant, "always." Ethan secured Claire against his back with improvised straps made from pieces of rope and a torn hide, distributing her weight across his shoulders. She rested her forehead lightly against him, breath warm against the back of his neck. Ranger stepped forward, positioning himself as the point of the formation. They exited the cabin. The sky wore a bruised shade of gray, and the forest was so quiet it felt as though the entire mountain held its breath. Snow muffled every sound, creating an eerie stillness. Ethan followed Ranger through the narrowing tree line until the forest abruptly fell away into a vast clearing. And there, spanning a yawning chasm at least 1,000 feet deep, stood the bridge, or what remained of it. The suspension bridge was a skeletal structure of rotting wooden planks and rusted cables. Entire sections were missing, leaving jagged empty gaps where boards had been claimed by time or weather. The cables groaned softly with each gust of wind, swaying like the tired limbs of an ancient creature. Claire inhaled sharply. "Ethan, we can't cross that." "We don't have a choice," he said calmly. "The extraction LZ is on the other side." Ranger stepped toward the edge, nose raised. His hackles lifted slightly. "What is it?" Ethan asked. The dog didn't bark, but his entire posture stiffened, a warning without sound. Ethan brought his rifle to his shoulder, scanning the opposite cliff through the scope. And then he saw it, a shimmer, a slight glint of light far up the rocks, reflecting off something round, polished, and deadly. A sniper scope. His stomach hardened. "They're here," Ethan muttered. Claire tensed behind him. "Ethan!" "Sniper, high ridge, 300 meters," he said quietly. "And if he's here, others are too. They've cut off every route except this one." He crouched behind a cluster of boulders with Ranger at his side. More movement flickered in the distance, shadows shifting behind rocks, dark figures blending with the cliff's natural contours. Enemy ambush positions, planned, patient, efficient. Claire's breath hitched softly. "We're trapped." "No," Ethan said, gaze fixed and unwavering. "Not while I'm breathing." He weighed the bridge, the wind, the angle of sniper fire, the time it would take Claire to crawl even 5 feet in her condition. None of it gave them an advantage. Except one thing. They wanted Claire alive, which meant they'd hesitate to shoot. But Ethan, he was expendable. Ranger growled low, reading Ethan's intent before Ethan even voiced it. "No," Claire said immediately, her voice cracking. "Whatever you're thinking, no." Ethan shifted her slightly so he could look back at her. She saw the decision in his eyes and felt her stomach twist. "Ethan, don't do this." "We don't get another option," he said steadily. "I need you to listen carefully. You and Ranger are going to cross the bridge." Ranger snarled softly, shaking his head in full-bodied refusal, something he almost never did. Ethan placed his hand on the dog's chest, firm but gentle. "Ranger, protect her. That's an order." Ranger whined, tail tucked, but he didn't move away. Claire shook her head desperately, clutching Ethan's vest. "We can all go together, slow, careful. They'll wait until we're halfway across and shoot the cables. They want you alive, Claire, not me." Her eyes filled with tears. "Ethan, please, don't sacrifice yourself." He softened, just for a breath. I'm not dying today, I promise. I just need to buy some time. He kissed her forehead gently. Not romantic, but grounding, human, real. It pulled a sound from her throat, something raw and terrified. Ranger, he commanded quietly. Take her. The dog hesitated, trembling. Take her. Ranger stepped beside Claire, nudging her side with a soft, rumbling growl that meant, move. I'll guide you. Ethan watched them reach the entrance of the bridge. Claire leaned heavily on her good leg, gripping Ranger's harness, trusting the dog completely. The structure groaned as they stepped onto it, ice cracking beneath the planks. When they were halfway across, Ethan positioned himself among the rocks near the mouth of the bridge. He raised his rifle. Then, with a roar that shattered the frozen air, he shouted across the canyon. Come on, you want me? Here I am. The reaction was immediate. The sniper fired the first shot, hitting a cable just inches from Ethan's head, sending sparks flying. He dropped into position and returned fire, not to kill, but to suppress, to keep their heads down, to buy a few more seconds. Gunfire erupted from multiple angles. Bullets chewed into the rocks around him, spraying chips of stone across his face. Ethan gritted his teeth, firing controlled bursts. Magazine change. Suppress. Move. Suppress again. His body moved like a machine, years of training guiding every motion while adrenaline and fear interlocked inside him. Across the bridge, Claire and Ranger stumbled onto solid ground. Claire crawled behind the protective formation of boulders Ethan had indicated earlier. Ranger stayed exposed until she was safe, then took cover beside her, panting hard. Ethan! She screamed across the chasm. Enough! Come on! But Ethan wasn't done yet. He reached into his pack with his free hand, fingers closing around the final block of C4, dense, cold, deadly. He sprinted toward the cliffside anchor of the bridge, bullets slicing the air around him. He slapped the charge against the thick steel cable, attached the detonator, and set the timer to 30 seconds. Then something punched into him. Hard. A blunt, brutal impact that spun him onto one knee. Fire exploded through his shoulder as blood soaked instantly through his multicam fabric. He gasped a strangled breath, forcing himself upright through sheer will. Ethan! Claire's scream pierced the canyon. He staggered backward, half running, half falling toward the small ridge behind him. Countdown in his head. 5, 4, 3. The explosion tore through the world with a shuddering boom. The bridge cable snapped like a whip, tearing free from its anchor. The decaying wooden planks were yanked sideways, the entire structure collapsing in a violent cascade of cables and splintered boards plummeting into the abyss. Silence followed, an awful gaping silence. Ethan collapsed into the snow, vision narrowing, white world fading to gray. Ranger barked across the canyon, frantic and wild, trying to leap forward despite the unreachable gap. Claire dragged herself toward the edge, tears streaming down her face. But Ethan heard none of it. The last thing he felt was cold, heavier than before, then nothing. Snow drifted quietly over the shattered canyon, falling in thin, delicate spirals that landed on Ethan Hale's unmoving form like a cold shroud. For a few long seconds after the explosion that ended the bridge, there was no movement, no breath, no sound except the faint groan of cables settling into the abyss. Then Ranger's cry shattered the silence, a desperate, broken sound that cut through the icy air. The Belgian Malinois paced frantically along the cliff's edge, amber eyes wild, tail stiff, paws digging furiously into the snow, as if he could carve a path across empty space by will alone. Claire Rowan, trembling from cold, pain, and raw helplessness, pulled herself forward with her hands, dragging her shattered leg behind her. Her hair clung to her tear-streaked face, and her olive-toned skin was nearly blue from exhaustion, but she forced herself to the edge of the cliff and screamed into the void. Ethan! The echo swallowed her voice. Ranger barked again, shrill, panicked. Claire grabbed his harness and pulled him against her, burying her fingers in his fur. Ranger, stop. We need to think. We need... Her voice cracked, breaking apart. We need him alive. But the chasm offered no comfort, only silence and snow. And then, movement, a small, agonizing shift in the white below. Claire gasped, leaning forward dangerously. Ranger, look! The dog froze, ears rigid. Ethan lay near a jagged outcropping 15 feet down, alive only by sheer luck and the snow that had cushioned a part of his fall. His multicam uniform was soaked in blood across the shoulder and chest. His plate carrier cracked at one corner. His face, usually carved with focus and determination, was slack with the fog of fading consciousness. Claire's breath stuttered in relief and terror. "He's alive! We have to get to him!" Ranger didn't need another word. He shot off along the rim, following the slope until he found a narrow, unstable path leading downward. Claire followed, crawling, dragging herself forward with her arms and good leg. She slipped twice, caught herself both times, pain tearing through her body like fire. But she didn't stop. Not when Ethan was below. Not after everything he'd done. Not after the way he had looked at her on the bridge, choosing her life over his own without hesitation. When they finally reached him, Ranger immediately pressed his head against Ethan's chest, whining in a low, heart-wrenching tone. Claire looked down at Ethan's pale face, brushing the snow from his eyebrows with trembling fingers. "Ethan, hey, look at me." A faint sound escaped him. Not a word, just breath. But it was enough. Claire swallowed hard, fighting back tears. "You promised you wouldn't die today." Ethan's eyelids fluttered, revealing slivers of steel blue beneath. "Did they make it?" Claire laughed, a broken, relieved, painful sound. "We made it because of you." Ethan tried to smile, but winced as pain cut through him. Claire forced herself upright and looped her arms under his, straining to lift. "Come on," she whispered. "We're getting out of here. We are all getting out." With impossible effort, she dragged Ethan across the snow, inch by inch. Ranger pushed from behind, nudging Ethan's legs, guiding him upward. The climb took everything they had. Twice Claire nearly collapsed. Once she blacked out for a full second before Ranger licked her face, jolting her awake. When they reached the flat ground above, Claire collapsed beside Ethan, chest heaving, vision blurring. But she wasn't done. She shifted, pulled Ethan onto her lap, supported his head against her chest. "Ranger? Beacon," she whispered. Ranger understood instantly. He darted to Ethan's pack, snatched the emergency locator beacon with his teeth, and brought it to Claire. With shaking hands, she activated it. A small green light blinked. A signal shot into the sky. Then there was nothing to do but wait. Snow whispered around them, soft and endless. Claire held Ethan tighter, her numb fingers brushing his cheek. "Stay awake, Ethan. Please, talk to me." His voice was barely audible. "Did I buy you enough time?" "You saved my life," she whispered fiercely. "Twice." "Good," Ethan breathed. "Worth it." "You idiot," she choked out, tears spilling again. "Don't say it like you're leaving." Ranger lay across Ethan's torso, placing his head on Ethan's chest as if anchoring him to the world. Time stretched, painful, slow, terrifying. Then, through the storming quiet, a distant thrum. Claire's eyes shot open. The sound grew louder, slicing through the freezing air with the promise of salvation. Rotary blades chopping the sky. A helicopter, a U.S. rescue bird. Claire yelled hoarsely, waving an arm. "Here! We're here!" Ranger barked, the deep echo rolling across the mountainside. The chopper descended, snow blasting in violent spirals. Two medics jumped out, both wrapped in heavy Arctic gear. One, a tall man with sandy blonde hair and a trimmed beard, scanned the area with tactical precision. His face was square, scar across the cheek, revealing history in some other battle. The other was a woman of stocky build, with dark curly hair, skin a warm brown, contrasting sharply against the snow, eyes sharp and compassionate. They introduced themselves quickly. Sergeant Lewis, the bearded medic, and Corporal Aria Wynn, the woman with calm authority radiating from her every gesture. Both moved with practiced urgency. Wynn checked Claire's vitals. Fever's high, severe fracture, dehydration, but stable enough to move. Lewis knelt at Ethan's side, examining the bloody shoulder and the cracked plate carrier. Gunshot wound, shallow but nasty, bruising across ribs from the fall. Guy's tougher than hell. "He is," Claire whispered. "Get him inside." The medics moved with efficient care. Ranger refused to leave Ethan's side, boarding the helicopter only after Ethan was lifted aboard. Inside the roaring cabin, Wynn secured Claire to a stretcher. Lewis worked rapidly on Ethan, starting fluids, dressing wounds, stabilizing fractures. Through the haze, Ethan's consciousness flickered, A warm weight pressed against his chest. Ranger. A hand slipped into his, Claire's, and her voice, soft but unbreakable, cut through the chaos. "We're going home, Ethan." His heartbeat steadied. He held her hand weakly, his thumb brushing the back of her fingers. "Good," he whispered. "Home. Sounds good." The rest blurred into a wash of noise and motion as the helicopter lifted away from the mountain of shadows. Weeks passed. Ethan woke in a military hospital in Germany, then was transferred to a naval rehabilitation center in California. His recovery was slow, but steady. His shoulder healed, his ribs mended. But the quiet moments lingered most when he would wake from a dull ache and find Ranger curled at his bedside, watching him with patient loyalty. Claire visited him daily. Even when her leg was in a cast, she hobbled in with crutches, her smile soft yet bright, her eyes carrying warmth that melted something frozen inside him. Sometimes they talked, sometimes they sat in silence. Both forms of closeness healed him in ways medicine couldn't. The day Ethan walked out of the hospital under his own power, Ranger at his side, Claire waiting near the entrance, he felt something strange. Peace. Later, he stood in full dress uniform at an awards ceremony, shoulder back, chin lifted. The Admiral pinned a medal on him, speaking words Ethan barely heard. "For extraordinary bravery and disregard for your own safety in the rescue of a fellow service member." Ranger received a medal too, a gleaming disc affixed to his collar. He sat proudly, tail thumping on the floorboards. Claire stood beside them, her leg healed enough for normal movement, her smile proud and filled with emotion. When the ceremony ended and applause faded, Ethan exhaled deeply, turning to Ranger and Claire. "So," Claire said lightly, though emotion shimmered in her voice, "they said rest is mandatory." Ethan smirked. "Guess we should follow orders for once." And so they did. Weeks later, at sunset, the three of them walked along the quiet beach in California. The sky rippled with streaks of gold and lavender, the waves rolling gently across the sand. Ranger ran ahead, ears flapping, occasionally sprinting back to bump Ethan's hand playfully. Claire walked beside Ethan, brushing his arm lightly with hers. "You know," she murmured, watching the water, "for a mission that almost killed us, it ended pretty beautifully." Ethan looked at her, then at Ranger, then at the horizon. "Yeah," he said softly. "It did." They continued walking as the sun slipped beneath the ocean, three silhouettes against a peaceful world. Finally whole, finally safe, finally home. In the end, their survival was more than strength, more than training, more than luck. It was a reminder that sometimes, whether on a frozen mountain or in the quiet battles of everyday life, miracles still happen. Not always loud, not always dramatic, but in the form of the people and loyal companions who refuse to let us fall. Maybe your miracle is a friend who checks on you when no one else does. Maybe it's a family member who lifts you when you're tired. Maybe it's the faith that whispers, "You're not alone, keep going." Life will always have storms, but God often sends someone or something to pull us back from the edge when we need it most. If this story touched your heart, please share it with someone who might need hope today. Leave a comment to let us know where you're watching from. And don't forget to like and subscribe so we can continue bringing these stories to a world searching for light. May God bless you, protect you, and guide you through every mountain you face. Amen.